Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing another video, and this one is something I tried to film on my phone, but I'm having some phone issues lately, so I'm doing this with my webcam. And this one is about the Young Turks and how much they are like Infowars nowadays. And my basic premise is that uh, both of them in the past have had some legitimacy to them. For example, Infowars back in the day was a lot less partisan, and Alex Jones would interview people like even like Cindy Sheehan and like people like that, or like Greg Palast. I mean, back in the mid 2000s, things were kind of different. We were kind of all united against George W. Bush and like the whole mandate that he had for imperialism and authoritarianism. So, and Alex Jones was pretty open-minded back then to hearing other voices. He didn't agree on economic policies, or he's more of a libertarian even back then. But he didn't really talk about that stuff. He was more against the authoritarianism and imperialism of the United States government. In my opinion, he thought that was a means to end to stop the globalism, as he calls it. The globalists, the New World Order, or whatever. So as time went on, he got more corrupted, more fat, uh, more full of himself, more narcissistic. And I think the same thing has happened to Young Turks. I used to like the Young Turks as well. Uh, they've gotten more sensationalist in recent years. They've always had some problems. Sometimes they used to have these kind of really weird, like guest commentators who were kind of SJW-ish and kind of, I didn't really like them. But the irony is some of those episodes, even Anna Kasparian used to be like the one, putting some common sense into the conversation, or her and her Chank, had more of a moderate point of view about some of that the more crazy stuff that got brought up there. So at least as far as a cultural thing. So, but as of now, we have, the Young Turks is all about these sensationalist clickbait kind of stories and headlines, almost seemingly celebrating death and destruction. And part of it was because, and apocalypse, like the apocalypse, it's always a sensationalist clickbait article style headline for their stories and for their features and for their, obviously their videos, which is the main thing, of course. That's what I mean by features and stories. Um, so like, and it just was like, became like, instead of showing, instead of punching up like they used to, quote unquote, punching up. And usually Jimmy Dore talks about punching up. Ironically, Jimmy Dore used to be on the Young Turks, but quit. They punch down on, they punch down. That's what we're seeing right now. And I think it is because of the billionaires that are funding Young Turks now, like Katzenberg, and this corrupting power of money influence. And they're pseudo progressives now. They're just like Alex Jones became kind of a pseudo libertarian after he started like apologizing for Ted Cruz and Sarah Palin and stuff. I remember what he used to call him, neocon scum, basically. Like he just hated him. The only people he liked were like Ron Paul and Rand Paul, and he actually liked people like Kucinich to some extent too, or maybe even the B word, the dreaded B word himself, Bernie Sanders, to some extent. He didn't agree with a lot of his stuff, obviously, but as far as when he was going against the Federal Reserve and like the financial crimes of 2008, he definitely was on board with some of his testimony and stuff. So something happened. I don't know what happened, but what happened to me was, as I talked about in my previous video, I started to see these stories from Young Turks, these videos, and they got more and more about, about people dying from the virus and being at these events and stuff, and just trying to like milk the tragedy as much as possible, and not really milk the tragedy in a way that was like, oh, it's sad that they died. It was more like, look at these dumb Republicans. See, that's why we got to stay home. And it wasn't like, um, it wasn't like, the tone wasn't like, Um, oh, I'm very concerned. We're very concerned. It's so sad that someone's gonna. It was more this condescending tone and arrogant tone against people that weren't following the social distancing, and then dying, apparently. And of course, even that was kind of like, you know, one person. They might have one person that went to a rally that died, and then they would cover that whole thing and just laugh about it and say, "Oh, it's because these Trump supporters are so stupid and evil and mindless, and selfish and stupid." It's punching down. It's punching down. It's not punching up. It's not punching sideways. It's punching down. That's really what it is. I mean, you can say what you want, but it's moronic to say that it's anything else. And that whole thing became a punchline. It's like, and I just don't support doing that. If you let's say you do think that people shouldn't go to rallies and gatherings or whatever, because of the virus. It's like if someone dies, you don't celebrate it. You don't celebrate that, and it's not like they celebrate. It's not like they came out right and laughed, but sometimes they're on the verge of laughing, and the way that the tone that they use. It's like it wasn't like I'm very concerned about this. This is this is very bad. It was more like, ha, 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 you're gonna die. Ha, ha, you're so stupid. Ugh. You know, and then for years, I watched Cenk Uygur make fun of Republicans and right wingers and stuff, and he does this like pseudo Southern accent. I do it too, about QAnon and stuff. But, and it's not. I don't think it's right. It's not necessarily right. I'm admitting one of my faults that I make fun of those types of people in some of my videos. But I don't want to come across like that to people in the first place. But it's like what TYT does is just plain awful. And as the spring, this is what happened. So in early 2020, I was still on board with Young Turks. I was watching them a lot, and I hadn't watched Jimmy Dore for a while. I was kind of like, because he is a little overbearing and a little dramatic. I like him a lot, but he doesn't punch down like TYT does. He's kind of sensationalist. You got to admit, he kind of assumes too much at times, but he doesn't punch down at all. He punches up that's all he does is punch up. You watch his videos. So I started watching him a little bit more, and I still watch Kyle Kalinske. I still like Kyle Kalinske. I think he has a good head on his shoulders. I don't think sometimes he's misguided, lately about some things, obviously. I don't agree with him about some of the handling of the crisis, virus stuff and, some of these other things, but overall I like him. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. So I still like Kyle Kalinske and Jimmy Dore and Crystal Ball and Sager or whatever. I always call him Sager, and I forgot his last name. I always forget it. All these people, but I don't watch like Humanist Report or TYT. Just some of these, some of it's just kind of lame now, But TYT, especially. I mean, I think that they're so sensationalistic and so fucking sometimes full of shit. Even I mean, some things have been discredited, and they never retracted some things that they got wrong. And they oversimplify things in a certain way too, and that's my belief too. And I've seen that. I've seen them do that. So I really think like the trajectory of the Young Turks and Infowars have a lot in common with how they've evolved as businesses and stuff, and how it's basically like this fat narcissist that is the head of both, but two different people, Cenk Uygur and Alex Jones, and the blood of the divisiveness, divisiveness of their the ways that they do their videos, whether it be Alex Jones or Alex Jones calls people like Luciferians for being a liberal, and Cenk Uygur may as well say that, but he'll just say that you're stupid and for believing any kind of supernatural or spiritual thing because he's an atheist and he's so much more right than the other person. So I mean, both sides of the same coin. And, you know, I might actually do this, but I'm not sure if, you know, the time that I have for doing videos, I want to do some other things with my videos, but I may compare clips one day, you know, Young Turks and Infowars. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, Young Turks is named after this genocidal group. You know, I mean, it is, but I don't think that was the intention of the name. It's kind of a slang term for like rebels, you know, back in the day. And it's like, oh, I'm a Turkish, but the Young Turks. It was a slang in like the 70s and 80s. It was kind of one of those things before, you know, people started to acknowledge the Armenian genocide and stuff. And a Kasperians are Armenian, so it's pretty fucking weird. But yeah, I just don't like. I can't watch the Young Turks anymore. And you know the gall that they had to just totally backpedal on the social distancing angle when the Black Lives Matter protest came, and they were concerned. They were concerned about the virus in those videos, but not about these anti-lockdown people, because they're wrong. Ugh. They're wrong. So I don't care if they die. You know. See, that's the problem with our country right now. Is that that's why I do videos about both, like saying that I understand both motivations of the anti-lockdown people and the Black Lives Matter. You know, it's like that's why I ostensibly support both, which is probably really confusing to people, but I think it makes perfect sense to myself. So you know, it's like they'll continue to poison the well with all their bullshit and their nonsense. Both parties, you know, Infowars, and you know, like I said, like you know, they had good intentions to some extent in the beginning. I don't think they were ever purely commercial products, but I don't think they were pure either. At any time either. So kind of somewhat in the middle of that whole debate. I mean, did Pat Robertson believe in Christianity when he began the 700 Club, or did he just want to make money? I don't think he just purely wanted to make money. I don't think L. Ron Hubbard purely wanted to scam people. It was kind of a combination of various things and various complexes these people have. Well, yeah, TYT is the Infowars of the left. There's no denying it now. I mean, just from time to time, you know, I'll watch a video or I'll peek because I unsubbed a while back. So I could tell you the two moments, and I think I mentioned this before, but it's kind of a more refined version of that I jumped off those trains. And the moment that I jumped off the train with Infowars, believe it or not, unfortunately, was not the Sandy Hook thing. It was, I wasn't really watching them anymore hardly, but I would, from time to time, I'd watch a video. Was the Ferguson riots, because it was like it was a very strange moment, because ostensibly they were kind of in support of the protests at first, like police, you know, talking about police state, and they were kind of on the side of the protesters. And then just in the middle of coverage, they did this about face like 180 flip. And at that moment, I'm like, something's wrong. It was very bizarre. It's like you could think of what you will with regards to these protests, you know, as far as the, you know, the whole thing with Michael Brown, or, you know, anything that's happened. But the fact that Infowars would do such a 180 flip was very suspect to me and very strange. And I was like, okay, so there's something not right here. I think they're kind of going down the tubes anyways. I'm going to stop watching. And the same thing happened with Young Turks. And that really happened this spring when, you know, the virus hit. It's like story after story came out where they were trying to conflate like this right-wing point of view, anti-lockdown point of view with people that died from the virus. Like, if you were anti-lockdown, you're more, even if you didn't, like, even if you read the story, like, even if you researched the story about the person and found out they never, like, really, they wore a mask at the protest, you know, or you saw, like, a picture of them, you know, or, you know, anti-lockdown person, Republican, Trump person, if they died of the virus, they would be like, oh, it's this. They would focus really on that. You know, they would focus on these people that would die of the virus that were against lockdowns, for example. without any context or nuance in regards to that. If a person, the many people that were pro lockdown, probably, let's say, let's say 5 people died that were like, they were social distancing, pro lockdown. They just happened to like somehow catch the virus. They're susceptible and died. Oh no, well those people are different. They're the they're the worthy victims. The unworthy victims are, well, in a way, it's kind of the worthy victims of Chomsky. I'm doing a video for BitChute exclusive about worthy and unworthy victims. This is kind of a Chomsky, Noam Chomsky term. Because, like, for example, the worthy victims in the late 70s, he said that the Cambodians were the worthy victims because it served U.S. propaganda at the time. And the East Timorese were not. That's where he kind of weighs those things. Of course, what happened in Cambodia was far more on a horrible scale than East Timor. Let's not get that wrong. But virtually the media just virtually blacked out any mention of the U.S. support of that whole slaughter. And that was the whole thing about the East Timor thing and what he was trying to say about worthy victims. So they would focus on these unworthy victims, because they're unworthy of living, basically, because they're so stupid that they still saw people in real life, or still didn't want their business destroyed by non-supportive government. So that was just sickening to me. And of course, I actually did still sub to them up through June. And once the Black Lives Matter thing happened, I was like, I saw the about face that they did on those protests. Like, oh, we love these protests, blah, blah, blah. Say what you will. Like, I support, like I said, I support some of the some of the ideas of both. Or ostensibly, I get where they're coming from, is what I should say. I empathize with both. So when they started to just kiss the ass of this whole thing and didn't, another thing I noticed is they wouldn't talk about like a huge spread of the virus amongst people that were, they mentioned a couple times there might have been someone in jail, they were scared that people would get it in jail, like they were jailed from the Black Lives Matter protest, but no word about that afterwards. We don't even know, because they never mentioned it again. But of course, if a lockdown protester went to jail and got this spread, and killed 5 people, they would be all over it. And that's the kind of fucking bullshit. That's the kind of propaganda that, is so disgusting to me. And that's why I got off of Young Turks. It's the same thing with Infowars. I tried to listen to Infowars months ago, and it was a nightmare. It was just like this stupid, like, ass kissing Trump, like, and just like celebrating things like that were stupid. And just like, for example, James Corbett, he got his start. I was on his channel, it's Corbett Report. Big time conspiracy guy. I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but I watch him, and there's some good ideas, there's some interesting ideas, some decent ideas, and he has some things right, So I do watch him because I'm going to watch him because he has some decent ideas, even though I don't agree with him about a lot of stuff too. But I went to the earliest videos on YouTube, and he got to start like basically kind of an Alex Jones acolyte, but he won't have anything to do with him now, it seems like, because he made some statements on some of his recent work. He's like, well, unlike certain people that will support FEMA camps or martial law, military martial law, if it's the right political figure in charge of it. And that was a big dig at Alex Jones, because Alex Jones has come out saying, well, FEMA camps are okay under Trump, if you jail liberal. I mean, he didn't say that exactly, but you could kind of get that vibe and that sense from a lot of what he said. So that kind of makes sense with James Corbett being consistent through his whole career is very, very something to applaud, because it has a lot of integrity with it, even if you don't buy into conspiracy stuff or anything like that. He's very consistent. He's never backed down from not wanting martial law, whether it's a Democrat, Republican, or Libertarian, or whatever. So, I mean, that's one thing that I respect about James Corbett. This video is not about James Corbett. But yeah, so basically, at this point, I try to watch people that are still contain the nuance that TYT used to, or the actual like wanting to get at the authoritarianism of any political party that Infowars used to have. And those are other people now, unfortunately or fortunately. But, like I said, because journalism a lot of times is about perpetuating these cycles, because that's how you make your money. That's how you make your living. Your livelihood depends on explosive ideas. These sensationalism. That's what it depends on. Matt Taibbi's Hate Incorporated, kind of woke me up to a lot of this stuff, and I highly recommend reading that book, because it's really about what is going on right now. I mean, it kind of gets to the source of a lot of it. And I would say even with the virus stuff, if you want to, it's not a conspiracy book by any means, but, the way that this modern landscape of ideas has formed is very much rooted in what he talks about in that book. So if you don't believe in conspiracy theories with the virus, you can definitely, fit his social theories from that book into a more, dare I say, safely rational, grounded ideology of what is happening with everything that's going on. And I'm not going to give away too much, because I think everybody should read the book. It's coming out next month as a paperback. What happened is I guess it's out of print. That's why it's $90 on eBay for a hardcover version. But he's finally doing a softcover version. Highly recommend everybody fucking read the book, because it's absolutely necessary. He'll talk about Noam Chomsky, and Noam Chomsky in the last 2 years has kind of disappointed me, and some people do think he's a gatekeeper and all that, and I'm not going to get into all that shit. I mean, regardless of, one thing about Chomsky is, regardless of what you think of him now or who he is, his ideas are relevant, even if you don't like him as a person. He works for MIT, there's military-industrial complex. Why would he do that? If he's really against all this wars and all this shit, you could say he's a gatekeeper, he's fucking controlled opposition, all this shit, but his ideas, applying them to the world at large, it's scientific to me. It's science, I mean, same with Matt Taibbi though. So Matt Taibbi doesn't have the same type of record of working. Well, he did work for New York Times or Rolling Stone. Did he work for New York Times? And New York Times. I believe he was part of New York Times for a while, but he's an independent journalist now, so he doesn't have that same tainted reputation, because he's not going to be, he's not part of the establishment like Chomsky had continued to be a tenured professor for all those years. So, but I highly recommend that book. It's a plug for that book, this video, but it's one of those things that you just have to sort out for yourself. People don't really, a lot of people don't think for themselves, and now people are discouraging that actually in the media. There's been some recent stuff, like James Corbett actually was talking about this article about don't do your own research. They were talking about that in some article in the summer. Don't do your own research. And then someone else on CNN was talking about how it's basically implying that you shouldn't trust all these other media sources other than the main ones, the dinosaur legacy mainstream media, So that's really all I got to say. And just remember, think for yourself. Actually think. A lot of that's becoming a kind of an endangered behavior nowadays. That's all. Peace out.